Good morning and welcome to the Caregiver Teleconnection. My name is Glenda Rogers and I'm going to be your facilitator for today's call with Dr. Elliot Sklar and Lucy Barylak. And as you can see on the screen there, we're going to be talking about the importance and benefits of eating healthy while caregiving. And we know that caregivers focus on the person they're caring for and kind of put themselves second. And so I'm excited to see this session today. So let me tell you just a little bit about Lucy and Elliot before they get started. Dr. Elliot Sklar is public health professional focused upon supporting the health of the public through academic work, research, and service. He has led healthy aging programs for seniors and for caregivers in Canada, Florida, and virtually. Dr. Sklar is an associate professor of healthcare sciences at Nova Southeastern University in Florida. He publishes and presents his work internationally, which focuses on the complexity of issues relating to aging and caregiving. And now about Lucy. Lucy Barylak received her master's degree in social work from McGill University and has dedicated her career to supporting caregivers. Lucy was the founder and long-term manager of the Caregiver Support Center at a respite program for family caregivers. There, she oversaw multidisciplinary training across caregiving, mental health, elder abuse, and palliative care. In 2003 and also in 2012, she received the Queen's Jubilee Award, presented by the Canadian Home Care Association, awarded for her dedication in developing a national coalition to support the issues and challenges facing informal caregivers. Ms. Barylak also co-edited a book for healthcare professionals entitled Responding Creatively to the Needs of Caregivers. She has been a key architect of screening and assessment tools of family caregivers, for which she provides training to healthcare professionals across North America. Lucy consults for private industry, including Well-Made Charitable Foundation and clinics in Texas. Additionally, she is a liaison supervisor at the School of Social Work at McGill University, where she currently supervises 20 interns. She also wanted you to know that she was a caregiver for her mother for many years. Lucy and Elliot, welcome to the session today.
Thank you. Lucy, did you want to get started?
Oh, okay. I thought that you were starting first. Research suggests that caregivers often put their nutritional needs last, leading to changes in body weight and potential health issues. In fact, stress that comes with caregiving can actually result in psychological changes in the body, including more spikes and dips in blood sugar levels. Our focus this year has been to take control of what is possible. And one of these things is how to nourish ourselves and our care recipient. And nourishes is a deliberate word here because it's also involving and providing care, which is something we need to do for ourselves. Our program today focuses upon the importance of nutrition for caregivers and care recipients alike. We'll discuss basics like hydration, electrolytes, research on diet and brain health, time-saving tips, and what to look for in prepared foods. We're not a nutritionalist, but we're here today to talk about nutrition in the context of caregiving and health, because nutrition has an impact on our health, of caregivers and the people you're caring for. Often caregivers don't receive referrals to nutritionists or have time to follow up if they do. And yet there is more and more research about the importance of diet in our overall health as it is relates to cognitive among care recipients as well. So according to the Administration for Community Living, caregiving also can take its toll on caregiver nutrition. Now that's important to remember. Limited time to cook or shop may result in reaching for sweets or picking up fast food. I mean, it's easier and time consuming rather than cooking, which don't need a result and resync for that kind of a nutrition. Nutrition that can short include fluids, it's very important, as well as fiber, vitamins, and minerals from fruits and vegetables that may not be present in convenience items. In fact, in a 2019 study found that high caregiver burden was associated with poor nutrition amongst caregivers. That leaves the caregiver at risk of malnutrition, believe it or not, and in turn, more susceptible to the physical effects of stress. The good news is that eating a healthy diet can reduce the negative effects of stress. So while caregivers are often rightfully focused on making sure they provide healthy meals for those they are caring for, it's very important for caregivers to keep their own nutrition, hydration at the top of their priority list. One of the greatest obstacles to caregivers feeling the ability to put more effort into good nutrition habits is time. It can feel overwhelming to add your already full to-do list, but there are small things that you could do, which we'll discuss today.
And I apologize that I got mixed up with my order of slides and presentation at the beginning. But welcome everyone. And this is such an important topic for us. Certainly because as a public health professional, I see food really as our medicine. And I think it's important that we think of food that way. It's our fuel. It is the cornerstone for our health in many ways. And I think that hydration is a really good place for us to start because water is almost free. And we can begin with a tip for all caregivers and really all people, because water is widely accessible to most people and almost free. And most people don't recognize that most of us are actually chronically dehydrated. If you feel tired or headache or not quite yourself, we often don't recognize that that can be a symptom of dehydration. And as we get older, dehydration can lead to headaches, imbalance, fatigue. All of these things are very important for caregivers who have people depending on them. So someone with dementia might also become dehydrated if they're not able to communicate or recognize that they are thirsty. They may forget to drink, and this can lead to increased headaches, increased confusion, and as we know, urinary tract infections and constipation, which are common. These can also make the symptoms of dementia worse. So dehydration is dangerous, really, no matter anyone's age, but seniors are more susceptible to fluid and electrolyte imbalances than younger people. And it's, again, something we don't really hear much about or talk about. Dehydration occurs when your body loses more fluid than it takes in. And while anyone is susceptible to it, older adults are at more risk for a couple of different reasons. As we age, our kidney function decreases. And when our kidney function declines, that means that more water may be lost through urination. In addition, there are certain health conditions. For example, the ability to retain water can be reduced by chronic illnesses like diabetes, even dementia, and also kidney disease. And this can also be the side effect, as we know, of certain medications. And seniors certainly take diuretics, more blood pressure medication. This can also increase water loss. So I always recommend drinking lots of water, but I am lucky because I happen to really like water. I'm not part of the wide majority. Many people don't like to drink a lot of water, and a lot of people just don't like water. So if you have a loved one or yourself don't like to drink water, try to find something that you enjoy that is limited in sugar. A good example is if you like juice, try to balance water to juice. So use maybe half a cup of water to half a cup of juice or even a little less. I also recommend to try to avoid soda as much as possible. But I caution with a but, if that's something that you love or if your loved one loves, then I say try to enjoy soda that perhaps doesn't have caffeine, because as we know, caffeine dehydrates us. So the same is true for coffee, tea. These things can dehydrate us more than they hydrate us because they have a diuretic effect. So it's an important reason why electrolyte and enhanced drinks might be important. And I see Jennifer is saying it's hard to hear me. The volume is low. I will speak up again. My volume is turned all the way up, but I do have a cold, so I do apologize. But keep the reminders coming for me to keep my voice up if you can't hear me. I'm going to talk a little bit about electrolytes because a lot of us think we know what they are. We hear a buzzword that a drink might have electrolytes or be electrolyte enhanced, but not really sure what that means. And electrolytes are really, really important because they help to balance fluid in our bodies. So essential minerals have a natural positive or negative electrical charge when they're dissolved in water. And they play a vital role in many of our bodily functions, which are very important, obviously. And as we age, this also becomes more important. So the key electrolytes are sodium, potassium, and magnesium. Sodium is needed for our nerves to conduct and to contract and relax muscles as well. Sodium also helps us to maintain a proper balance of water and minerals in our body. Potassium helps us to maintain normal levels of fluid inside of our cells. And it also helps with muscle contraction, and it supports normal blood pressure. So as you can imagine, potassium is very important. And magnesium actually supports over 300 functions in our body, from producing energy to growing muscle to even maintaining our heartbeat. It also plays a very important role in brain function and our mood. So for all these reasons, electrolytes are very important. And there are food sources from which we can get electrolytes, such as leafy greens, fruit, meat, nuts, legumes. And I'm sure many of us know that most of our foods are chock full of sodium. So there's less to worry about there, but we want to make sure that we're getting our potassium and our magnesium. And tap water actually contains very little potassium, interestingly. So our diets contain typically more sodium than we need, but not quite enough potassium and magnesium. And many people are deficient in these minerals. So you might have heard that some people say their ankles swell when they have too much salt. Well, it's potassium that actually helps to regulate fluid in our cells. And if we don't get enough potassium, we might retain more fluid. Potassium can be found, for example, in bananas. That's an excellent source of potassium, avocados, leafy vegetables, dried fruits, and also legumes. Now, there are also electrolyte drinks, which can be beneficial for a variety of people and also depending on the time of the year. During the summer, when it's hot and we sweat more, these drinks may be more important than during wintertime. But it depends where you live. And we were talking about all the crazy weather people have been having across the country. So it's just an important thing to think about, that there's a seasonality to our perspiration and to the fluids that we might lose. And so it becomes all the more important for us to get electrolytes. So if you are yourself someone who doesn't love to drink water, someone who might benefit, you think, from getting more electrolytes in the fluids that you're drinking, you can look to electrolyte enhanced water. A lot of bottled water have electrolytes added for flavor, but also for the reasons I was discussing. You can get electrolyte drops, which you can add to water. There's also Vita Coco coconut water, and coconut water is extremely high in potassium. It's a very good source of potassium. So these are some examples, and of course, Gatorade, Pedialyte, things like that, but you want to make sure that they have as little sugar as possible. So again, tap water does not contain the same levels of potassium and magnesium and often sodium as electrolyte enhanced water. On average, 1 liter of tap water, and I find this very interesting, only contains about 2 to 3% of our daily intake for sodium, calcium, and magnesium. and has actually little to no potassium. So I know that many of us these days are using filtered water, filtered tap water, but this is one instance in which you might want to consider getting electrolyte drops, as I mentioned, or at times buying electrolyte enhanced water. So I wanted to ask if anyone had any questions, because I know that this is a lot of information and something that we don't really talk very much about. We hear a lot about our diet and proper nutrition, but often not enough focus on hydration. Any
So you can
questions?
unmute your microphone or use the chat box if you'd like to join the conversation.
We always like to start out with hydration because it's something easy that we can add without necessarily having to change other things in our diet. And I really believe that things work in small steps. So hydration is a great place to start, especially if you're a caregiver for someone who is older and need to be concerned that you and them are getting enough water and electrolytes in your water.
I do want to say, Elliot, that I'm not a water drinker. I have a really hard time drinking water. But I started drinking coconut water and I just love it. And so hearing that it's healthy for you really is reassuring. And it's got a nice little sweet flavor to it, especially when I buy the organic one. So if people don't like to drink water, try coconut water. It really, really is very refreshing.
It is. And I see that Alexandra said it sounds so easy, yet still hard. Yes, it is. Any new habit is going to be hard. We've recommended in the past getting refillable water bottles that show you how much water you should be consuming. They can even double as weights during the day. Glenda, there you go. There are these big thermos type of cups now that have been very popular on social media that a lot of people like. We're coming off the heels of the new year where a lot of people make New Year's resolutions to eat better or to be healthier or to drink more water. And a lot of people aren't able to follow through with that. Usually resolutions, people sort of taper off with them by the end of January. So that's why, again, it's important to make small incremental changes that we can incorporate. And I know that it's not so easy.
No. I also want to mention, and tell me if I'm right, that being hydrated really helps the body system move out, especially if constipation is an issue.
And Jolene asked, what are your thoughts on adding Celtic salt to water? That's a great question. My thoughts are not to do that. I do believe we get more than enough salt and sodium in our diet. Where I have greater concern is magnesium and potassium. I personally take magnesium and potassium supplements after discussing that with my doctor. We always recommend that you discuss any changes to your diet, supplements, vitamins with your doctor. But I would be, again, more concerned about potassium and magnesium than sodium, just given the nature of our North American diet. Great question. All right.
Okay, so we'd like to share a letter that we received from a caregiver. We received quite a few, but this one was very interesting. And it reads, I'm a caregiver for my wife, who was the most amazing cook. She has Alzheimer's disease, and I'm now her full-time caregiver. I worked full-time my whole life and never learned how to cook. And now I work from home. One of the greatest challenges in this journey for me has been not knowing how to cook and not having the time to learn while working from home and providing care. I've been buying prepared and frozen meals, which I know isn't the best. Since my wife's diagnosis, I have gained weight. My blood pressure is high, and so is my blood sugar. My doctor told me I need to cut back on salt and sugar, which is pretty much in all of the prepared food I've been eating. I have no idea where to begin. Oh, well, I really, really sympathize with you, and I'm sure you're not the only person who's going through this. And even if you do cook, you know, we were talking about how difficult it is many times for caregivers to have the time to actually make the effort, but it's very, very important. You know, many of us know we should eat better, but having time to think about planning your own meals can seem like a luxury when you're a caregiver. How can you think about nutrition, much less do anything about it, when you have so much to do in your caregiving role? But it's important to find a way. As Elliot said, one step at a time. You may have heard this before, but it bears repeating. You have to take care of yourself before you can take care of anyone else. Eating nutritiously is one of the best ways you can do that. It is so important. So let's look at how do you even start? Okay, small steps. So you know, to eat nutritionally, you can become a healthy eater by making simple, small changes. So here are some ideas to get started. Ask, you know, it's very important to ask for a referral for a nutritionist and to look to see if there are any cooking classes in your community that might be of interest if you have respite care, or there are a lot on videos. And something nutritious to your, you know, add something nutritious to your current meal regime instead of taking something away. For example, go ahead and keep eating ice cream a little, not too much, but add chopped veggies to your eggs in the morning and to your pasta at dinner. So it's just kind of balance things out. Try to think of some of the foods your mom used to make and see if you can find easy recipes to follow online. Many also have videos that walk you through each step. Find healthy substitutes. For example, you can switch from white rice or pasta to whole grain versions for extra fiber and nutrition. Cut down on highly processed foods and foods with added sugar, including sugary drinks, are really, really bad for you. Even if you stick with processed foods, some are better than others, and a nutritionist can help you learn about food labels and how to make better choices. For example, foods that are lower in sugar, less processed, have a good ratio of protein and carbohydrates and lower in fats. So if you go to a nutritionist, they will teach you what the labels, because there's so many words there that we don't even understand what they mean, but the nutritionist can really help you identify all those fancy long words. It's also important to try to shop more around the perimeter of the grocery store or where items are refrigerated. That's often where healthier options are located. If these suggestions seem overwhelming to you, take one at a time in whatever order you wish. Now, the other thing that's also good is plan ahead for earlier food preparation. That's important. Planning ahead can really help, and many grocery stores also have items already chopped or prepared to make things easier. For example, you can get mushrooms already sliced to add to a jarred tomato sauce and add some fresh basil to simmer. Make some whole grain pasta, as I said before, switch over. Or, you know, you can buy a rotisserie chicken with some vegetables that you can microwave in a bag and are easy options for a healthy meal. So some prepared food are okay, but you just add on to it. Remember the food groups, you really need to look at that. So keep on a shopping list is very important, because sometimes you go to the grocery store, you forget what you wanted, but it's good to write it down on a weekly basis. Now you could use a slow cooker, pressure cooker such as Instant Pot or an air fryer. That really helps a lot in time. Double a recipe and refrigerate or freeze leftovers for another night's meal. I do that very often. I make a little bit more and I freeze it. It's also good to cut extra veggies and save them for another meal or snack. Veggies are a great snack. You can dip it with hummus or any other dip that you really like. And it's really good to stock up on smart things so that you have them in the pantry on handy. And it's always good to ask for help. You know, don't hesitate asking for help at all. So if you have a family or friend available, invite them to help you. They can help, they can teach you, they can show you how to prepare some small meals, doing some of the chopping and preparations with you, preparing a sauce or a marinade, even asking them to help you clean up in the kitchen after dinner. It's okay. Sharing easy, healthy recipes with you, or asking them for help. You can ask people who are willing. If people ask you, can I help with anything? You can ask them, can you prepare a few nutritious meals? And you could either freeze them or use them as you want. You know, even with support and help from others, getting into the habit of eating healthy takes time. It takes the average person about 6 weeks to create a habit. I learned that. I didn't know that it takes that long, whether it's good or bad. So think about that. It could be a bad habit as well. Start with small goals that you can easily achieve. Small goals will go a long way and give you confidence to strive for more. You know, the National Council on Aging has some amazing information, resources, and recipes on your website. And you have the link right there where you will be getting all these flyers. So you don't have to worry about writing it down. Click on it and you'll have amazing recipes. You know, Meals on Wheels also is a good way to get some nutrition. It may be helpful to have someone else make meals, as I said before, to help you out with that, but one step at a time. Now, there's a lot of benefits to eating well. You know, with these tips and guidelines, planning, buying, cooking, and eating healthy meals won't seem like such an effort. The rewards are worth it. By eating nutritionally, you can increase your energy level, and that is a given. Feel better emotionally, strengthen your immune system, reduce the risk of developing infections, get to or maintain a healthy weight, lower your risk of heart disease, cancer, and diabetes, reduce recovery time when you get sick. Actually, nutrition really does that if you need to eat well, and it strengthens your bones and your teeth, especially for women. So having said all that, audience, I would like to ask you, does anyone have any tips that they want to share that have been helpful, or any foods that you recommend as nutritious and that you enjoy eating? So let's hear you.
We'll give everyone a chance to answer, and then I will go back to the chat and discuss some of the questions we received.
For sure.
So any tips from anyone of things that have been helpful for them? I
Well,
think your tip about getting some pre-cut vegetables as an example is one that I use personally. It makes things a little faster and easier. Jennifer shared liquid IV hydration multiplier plus immune support drink mix. That is something that she recommends, and that is very popular these days. I know that they also sell it at Costco, and it's easily available. It's a powder that you add to 2 cups of water, comes in a variety of different flavors, and it also has the electrolytes that I was talking about, which help to hydrate us. We did get some questions in the chat. Yamaya had asked which form of magnesium is the most effective, food, supplement, or topical, or a combination? And this is a great question. For those of you who are active on social media, there have been a lot of videos recently about people singing the praises of topical magnesium on your feet to help you get a better night's sleep. It's very interesting. But with any mineral or vitamin, the most effective way for our bodies to absorb it is to get it through food. And nuts are a great source of magnesium. They make for a great snack. and they help to keep us full longer as well. So that's a great question, and I hope a good answer there. Minerva did share that frozen veggies are just as good as fresh veggies. And yes, that is true. Certainly, they can be less expensive and easier for people to work with if you're cooking or baking or even making soup. And Christine said, I'm nervous when it comes to fresh greens because of how many hands they've gone through. I like to make sure the germs are killed, so I always cook my veggies. When they are cooked, do they lose a lot of nutrients? It's an excellent question. And I think a lot of people feel this way. Since the pandemic, we are certainly more sensitive to the hands that are touching our food. So there are fruit and vegetable washes that you can buy. You can also rinse your fruits and vegetables in a vinegar and baking soda solution with water. You'll see that everything comes bubbling up to the top, and then you can rinse it off. But to your question about loss of nutrients when cooking vegetables, it depends how you cook them. So, for example, if you boil broccoli and you drain it, the water in which you boil the broccoli will contain a lot of nutrients that you're losing. If you're making broccoli soup and you keep that water to use for your soup, then you are retaining those nutrients. Many people like to steam vegetables because when they're steamed, there's no fluid in which there'll be nutrients lost. So as a result, steaming is a good choice. And there are many options, as Lucy was saying, of vegetables that you can buy that are in a bag, and you just put them in the microwave and they steam on their own in that bag. That's a great option to help retain the nutrients within the vegetables. When you do cook vegetables, there will be some nutrients lost. There are some benefits to eating things raw, but there's debate about that. And my personal opinion is you're still getting more nutrients when you eat vegetables than when you eat chips. So eat all the vegetables, no matter how you cook them. It's a really great question. Now, I wanted to also share, there's another benefit to eating well when it comes to our health. And this is from the results of a national study with a very large number of participants that was just published a few weeks ago, actually. So end of January 2024 in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. And it showed that among individuals with Alzheimer's and dementia, a daily multivitamin improved memory and cognition over 2 years compared to a placebo. Now, that's a very important finding, I think, not only for those with Alzheimer's and dementia, but we've received over the years so many questions from children of parents who have Alzheimer's and dementia trying to reduce their risk of developing the illness however possible. And we certainly know that nutrition has a role in terms of our health and our well-being. We can't show a cause and effect with things. Same with this study as it pertains to this daily multiple vitamin, which interestingly enough was Centrum Silver. That's what was used in the study. But I think it shows a lot of promise because for many of us, we don't necessarily get all of the vitamins and minerals that we need from our diet. And that's especially true for people with Alzheimer's and dementia who sometimes have a challenge with eating properly or eating well. So there are a lot of benefits to eating well, as Lucy was discussing. And by eating well, I mean eating foods that are nutrient rich, like the ones that we're showing you here, like avocados and nuts. There's another study actually underway that is combining the use of this daily multivitamin with a cocoa supplement. And cocoa, I mean actual chocolate cocoa, because of the number of antioxidants and flavonoids in cocoa. And there seems to be some thought that this can also help with cognition. So it's just a great example, I think, for all of us in terms of the power of our diet as it relates to our health, and that includes our cognitive health. We did get another comment that seasonal fruits and veggies can also be bought in bulk and frozen. This can save money, absolutely. There's also a new food delivery service nationally called Misfit Market, and they are touting themselves as having lower price produce and groceries that they ship right to you because they use things that are in season. And so when there's bulk of things that are in season, they're able to price it lower. And that's a great tip for being able to stock up on things. So I wanted to share some examples of foods that I really love that are nutrient rich. Also some examples of prepared and frozen foods, because I wanted to provide some examples of things that you can buy that aren't so terrible for you. So think of it as harm reduction. Instead of getting Ben & Jerry's ice cream, I will sometimes get some Halo Top. It's only 280 calories for the entire pint of ice cream. That doesn't mean that you should eat the whole pint, but it's a much lower calorie option for those who are looking, for example, to lower their sugar intake. And I enjoy topping it with frozen blueberries because blueberries are extremely high in antioxidants. I think it's important to say out loud that food is a source of pleasure in our lives. And usually when we talk about eating healthier, it sort of is a drag for a lot of people because we associate that with not having the things that we enjoy. That's why diets don't work, because when you cut things out, it's like holding your breath. How long can you do that for? So we really are advocates and supporters of enjoying food because food really connects us with our upbringing. And Lucy, you talked about using recipes that you may have grown up with. I noticed that most of the things that I cook are things that I used to see my mom making. And so it makes me feel more connected, I guess, to my upbringing, my culture, my heritage. It's also, food is something we've learned to celebrate with, to mourn with, to comfort ourselves with. And caregivers need comfort. Let's face it, the role of caregiving can be very challenging. And when you're at home and you're with a care recipient and you don't have respite, that can be hard. So I think there are a lot of reasons why diet and nutrition can be challenging for caregivers, and why also we need to emphasize the fact that food is a source of pleasure, especially for caregivers, when they feel that there's little else perhaps to bring them pleasure. So I really like us to focus on the foods that we enjoy and that are also good for us nutritionally. So ahead of our program today, we were asked by a caregiver whose parent has Alzheimer's disease if there's anything that they can do, as I was mentioning, to help to prevent it. And we're going to talk about that in a minute, but some of the things, and I bring that up because some of the things that you're looking at on the screen here are part of that equation. So the blueberries, very high in antioxidants. I love dry roasted edamame. You can get this at most grocery stores, even Walmart. It's extremely inexpensive, cheaper than nuts actually, has more fiber. It is very good for heart health and less fat actually than peanuts. Dark chocolate is a very good source of antioxidants and actually helps to boost our mood. Dark chocolate is one of the few foods that releases oxytocin when we eat it in our bodies, which make us feel better. So it's important to integrate things that make us feel good as part of our nutrition too. I happen to love key lime pie, and if I'm in the mood for that, I'll sometimes get a Chobani zero sugar yogurt. No sponsorship here, I don't work for them. I just enjoy their 60-calorie yogurt because they use natural sweetener, stevia. They don't use sucralose or aspartame, which are not the best for you. And it is a good source of protein. It makes for a good snack. And as an example of a frozen meal here, I have something from Trader Joe's. If there's a Trader Joe's near where you live, they have a great assortment of packaged foods, prepared foods that are often a little healthier for you than other grocery stores if you look at the labels. So I highlight this meal because, and this is a cod frozen meal that is imported actually from France, a country that does not permit for a lot of the food additives that we have here in the US. So that's a good sign to begin with if you see that something is imported from a country in Europe or in Canada. Usually they don't permit a lot of the things that are in the American diet that are not so great for us, like MSG, high fructose corn syrup. And in this particular meal, the whole meal only has 370 calories, which is on the low side, but it has a good amount of protein. If I see correctly, it's 22 or 23 grams of protein as compared to 14 grams of fat. I like to look at the ratio of fat to protein because a lot of packaged food has more fat than it does protein, and we want to try to get more protein than fat. Another thing to look at is sodium. In this case, the meal has under 25% of our recommended daily intake of sodium. I believe 22 or 23% as well. If you compare that to most lean cuisines, as an example, and that's what this is kind of a replica of, many lean cuisines will have about 30, 35% of our recommended daily intake of sodium. And if you get a Stouffer's meal, as an example, those will sometimes even contain more. So we really want to watch for sodium, as an example, in our prepared foods, and look at the ratio of protein to the total fat. That is important as well. Any questions about anything here? Anything that anyone else wanted to add? I hope that was a good Reader's Digest version of some things to look for in packaged foods.
No, I think it's so, so important to look at the packages and have a good understanding of what you're actually buying. Yeah. So that was really, really very important. I learned a lot too, Elliot. Thank you for that. You know, it's hard to pinpoint exactly what things we do or eat that link with long-term health conditions. But there's more and more evidence that our lifestyle and what we eat has a lot to do with it. So I do want to talk about, has anyone participating heard of the blue zones? Okay, these zones include a handful of places around the world where people live the longest and in the best overall health. It's really very, very interesting. The only such places here in the US is called Loma Linda in California. Back in 2008, Loma Linda University Medical Center data showed that less than 5% of their older patients had dementia, something that is still studied today. Because when the research went to communities right next door to that place, they saw markedly increased rates of dementia and stroke. Patients and Loma Linda had very different lifestyles than the average American. They are Seventh-day Adventists, eat mostly vegetarian meals, exercise regularly, and have strong family and community ties. The blue zone shows a lot about the relationship between our health, behavior, and in general, how we live our lives. I really was extremely interested in that. And I know, Elliot, that you talked a lot about these blue zones. And maybe if you could just go over it a little bit more, emphasizing, because when I sort of looked at it and read about it, it really had a combination of eating well, exercising, but also socializing was a big aspect of it. And when we talked about exercise, it doesn't mean just going to the gym. It possibly means parking your car a little bit further away from the shopping mall so that you can actually walk over and get those steps in. So I'm going to kind of pass it over to you a little bit to highlight that.
Sure, absolutely. All the things that you said. So yes, and if those of you have Netflix, there's actually a great documentary about the blue zones on Netflix. But here in California, in Loma Linda, there is a much lower incidence of dementia and stroke. And that is because of diet, exercise, and also community. There are a couple of blue zone areas across the world which seem to have those same things in common. And I'm going to go back here to the Mind diet for a moment. because this really does sort of mirror a little bit of what a blue zone diet might include to some extent. Now, people in Loma Linda are Seventh-day Adventists, many of them. They don't eat meat, and so they eat plant-based diets, which may have an impact. And if you look at the other areas across the world, certainly there's more consumption of fish and less of meat. And Jennifer had said plant-based meats such as Beyond Beef, you can change out meats in your meal, which is true. And that is something that's recommended. But I also caution that things like Beyond Beef and Beyond all these meats are very highly processed. So something to think about, places like Whole Foods, they do sell meat alternatives that are a little bit less processed, that are made from wheat and things like that. So it's just something to think about. And some of those plant-based meats are also very high in sodium. So ideally, you want to try and focus, and it's called really the mind diet, because this is thought to help with our cognition, but also longevity and overall health. Now, it's important to note that there's no diet that has shown to reverse Alzheimer's or dementia. And because these things occur over a long period of time in the life course, it's very hard to pinpoint specific things that we're doing that contribute or that diminish from risk. But when you look at Loma Linda and you look at the health behaviors of their population and their health outcomes, it's quite interesting. And it certainly supports thinking that our diet has something to do with our health outcomes. So eating more nuts, eating more berries, eating more beans and whole grains, fish, specifically salmon or other fish like tuna or trout, and having poultry twice a week is also part of the mind diet. Olive oil is used as a primary oil, and not to have more than 1 glass of wine per day. Things to avoid include red meat, butter and margarine, because they're high in saturated fat, cheeses as well, to limit that, as well as sweets that have refined sugar, and fried or fast food, not more than once a week. So there are certainly some, some different ideas as it comes to diet and the health benefits. And I think for many people who have a family member who is experiencing Alzheimer's and dementia, you want to try to do what you can that's within your control to help improve your own health and also the health of a loved one if you're caring for them. I thought that the study about the multiple vitamin was actually quite compelling. There are more than 5,000 people who participated in that study, and it took place just recently. So very interesting. I think we'll see more about the connection between our diet and health outcomes in future research. But the other thing to keep in mind too is that no big pharma company stands to profit when we are healthier because we eat better and we make better decisions for ourselves. So when I say we don't talk enough about diet, we don't talk enough about hydration, it's because there's no one that stands to benefit other than yourself. And no one's going to pay for a TV advertisement for that. So keep these things in mind. We are going to share a copy of our presentation and all of the resources that we have included, which are hyperlinked. So when you get the slides, you just simply have to click on these blue links and they'll take you directly to the website. Before we turn it back over to Glenda, Lucy, if you have any final comments, and then if there are any last questions.
Well, what I want to say, what I liked what you said, you said a lot of very interesting educational things, but the fact that diets don't work, I think that's important to keep in mind. You don't have to be on a diet to eat well, to be healthy, and even to lose weight. It's a balancing act. As Elliot said, you don't have to cut out everything, but in moderation. And eating a lot of fresh vegetables and fruit and eating unprocessed food, I think, is the best way to go. So if you need to treat yourself a little bit of ice cream now and then, use the ones that are less in sugar. The same thing, Most of the things that I do, I cook at home. I don't buy a lot of cans because sodium. So you just have to kind of look. It doesn't mean you can't have fried chicken once in a while. It's okay, but balancing it and getting the exercise by really, if you can't, go to the gym, or walking is the best exercise that you could do for yourself for 10 or 15 minutes a day or a couple of times during the week. So that's what I wanted to add. And if there's any other questions, now is the time.
You know, Lucy and Elliot, one of my friends has kidney disease, and it's been a real eye opener because we get together and I've tried to provide, you know, snacks for her other than fresh vegetables and particularly fruit in this case. She has to say it 3% or less of sodium. And so when I go out and start looking at labels, my goodness, is that an eye opener? Hard to find anything that's 3% or less.
Yeah, absolutely. The only thing that I could think of are unsalted nuts. Off the
Now
top
we
of my
do
head.
that and strawberries and blueberries regularly. I found a pudding, which is interesting. It's like a mousse, a chocolate mousse that has 2% sodium in it. And I use, you know, non-fat milk. And so she really enjoys that when she comes down. It's a real treat.
So I'm going to give you a 1-minute recipe here. If you want to make a chocolate mousse the next time that she comes to visit, take some ripe avocados, throw them in the
Yes.
blender with some dark cocoa and some agave syrup or any type of sweetener that you like. Not granulated sugar because the consistency won't be the same, but maple syrup or an agave syrup. And if you blend that together, you would have no idea that there was avocado as the base of it. There's no sodium in it. There's no dairy. And it is absolutely delicious. And it tastes extremely rich. And it's only 3 ingredients.
Perfect. Well, I'll do that.
I'm going to do that today.
Yeah, sounds really good.
You can add a touch of vanilla extract if you like, if that's, you know, something that you enjoy, but really you only need the 3 ingredients, and no one would ever know that it was avocado and that it wasn't a cream or a dairy base. It's amazing.
Terrific, terrific. I'm going to try that. Anyone else have a question or a comment? We have about 5 minutes. You can always go to the chat box or unmute your microphone, raise your hand on Zoom, and join us in this conversation.
We got some great comments and questions today.
Really did.
Christine had asked which substitute sugars should we avoid? And the answer I provided was really aspartame is the number one. That's in stuff like diet soda most commonly, and there's a lot of research that came out in the last year or two linking that to cancer. So of all of the substitute sweeteners, I would say try to avoid that one.
I do have a question for you, Elliot. I've seen an advertisement lately that I haven't seen before about Splenda. You know, so I'm just wondering about that.
So when I started Weight Watchers in the 1990s, Splenda was my go-to sugar substitute. And fast forward to working on my doctorate in public health, one of my mentors was one of the inventors of Splenda. And Splenda actually has bleach in it. That's what gives it the white coloring. So as I learned over the time, Splenda isn't actually the best option. There are a number of newer, more natural sugar substitutes on the market, things like coconut sugar, monk sugar, stevia. You can bake with many of these as well. And they're much more closer to something natural than something like Splenda. So we've evolved over the last couple of decades.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's good information. Thank you.
All right, let me jump for just a minute while you're thinking about it, if you have other questions. Wait a minute. Darlene, did you have a question?
No, ma'am.
Okay, your phone was unmuted, so I thought I would call on you. That's fine. I'm going to
Okay.
tell you what's coming up next month, and next month is what, 2 days away? Oh my goodness, 1 day away, really. In March on the Caregiver Teleconnection, I'll be back with you on Tuesday, March the 5th at 1 o'clock Central Time. This is another Ask Dr. Tam questions and answers. We've moved to every other month now with Dr. Tam. If you've been looking for her, we'll be back on Tuesday the 5th. And then on Thursday, March the 7th, and having to do with the conversation we've been having, that's at 10 o'clock Central, Thursday, March the 7th. Dr. Paul Benheim is going to be back with us, and I'm looking on my phone. So he's going to talk about Alzheimer's and other dementias and how to prevent them. I can't read it. Anyway, he's going to be talking about prevention for Alzheimer's and dementia, which will be a very interesting topic. And hopefully he'll be covering some dietary things too, Elliot. I'm sure he will. I like your small baby steps. So before we close, any other last minute questions or comments? It'll be a couple of days and you'll receive the presentation so that you'll have access to all the resources that Elliot and Lucy have provided for you today. Well, okay. Final comments, Lucy and Elliot.
Well, all I can say is stay well, stay healthy, take care of yourself, eat well. And as we were saying to you, one step, every baby step at a time. If you even change one thing today, we're going to be very happy.
Avocado
I agree.
mousse, that's what I'm changing today.
Me too.
Avocado mousse is delicious, but you can start by having one intentional glass of water that you wouldn't normally today.
Right.
You know, everything starts with baby steps. So I really want to thank all of you for participating today because this was step number 1.
Thank you, Lucy and Elliot. I look forward to working with you soon, I hope. Bye,
Likewise.
everybody. Thanks for
Bye.
joining us.
Thanks, Minerva. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.